First, what's your name?
My name's Rob Skiba.
Spell that for me. What color is the sky?
The sky's blue.
The sun is.
Two.
The earth is.
Black.
I'm sure of that. You laugh.
Well, I could see I was being baited, so.
Well, I mean, these are questions that like everyone thinks they got
But no,
answers to.
are you crazy first? Okay. Oh, you're not crazy. Okay, so what's the shape of the earth?
But, I mean, these are things that everyone thinks they know and
Of
the
course.
answers to.
Right.
And I've always known the answers since I was small children.
Sure.
At what point did you discover or believe that the earth may not be long?
Well, let me just say, first of all, I went kicking and screaming into this. No way. I don't believe this. This is insane. This is totally crazy. Then I watched Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues. You probably heard a lot of people talking about that. That's what began to initially make me question what I thought. And that's what it really came down to, is Mark challenged me. I actually have a radio show, and I interviewed him April 15th, 2015. And I don't remember if it was on the show itself or afterwards. But he basically said, okay, Rob, I get it. You believe you're on a spinning ball. Great, prove it. Why do you believe what you believe? And when I really thought about that question as it pertains to this subject, I never really asked myself, why do I believe it? I mean, sure, there's been a globe in every classroom since kindergarten. We've seen all the movies. I was a huge Star Trek, Star Wars fan. I mean, I had a telescope. I was obsessed with NASA. You know, I was a NASA fanboy. Wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up. Globe everywhere. Never questioned why do I believe it? It's a given. I don't question air. Air's air.
You breathe.
I breathe. Right. So it seemed like an absurd question. Until I actually did what he said. He said, prove it. I thought this would be easy. So immediately, the first thing you say is, we've all seen the picture. You know, I was born June 26, 1969. A month later, man's allegedly walking on the moon. My dad took photographs of the television when it was supposedly happening. You know, so yeah, I mean that's all I ever wanted to do was be an astronaut. You know, I look at these things and I'm going, okay, why do I believe? Because they said it. That picture came from NASA. That came from Apollo 17. That's the famous picture we've all seen in the textbook. But as soon as you start looking into the pictures of the globe, you start seeing words like composite or animation or something that tells you this is not an actual photograph of the Earth. And at that point, you start saying, wait a minute. I mean, we've supposedly got stuff out there flying around taking pictures of this place. Why do we have these pictures that say composite? That's the beginning of the question.
So the beginning is you don't really believe somebody walked on the moon?
Absolutely not. No way. In fact, I would challenge you. Tell me why you believe a man walked on the moon.
Why would you understand why?
No, don't ask me a question. I asked you first.
No, I mean,
why would?
That's
Why
a
do you
big belief.
Why do you? One giant leap for mankind. Why do you believe we walked on the moon?
Because you've seen the pictures of it.
So you believe the pictures.
And a man went to lived his life saying it would. This would be really crazy.
So man has never lied. Ever.
Not
Never. Man has
not
never
true,
lied.
but that would be a lot of lies from a lot
A
of
fair amount of people. 12 people first. So 12 people never lied.
Allegedly, and so
Why not?
why wouldn't Russia have wanted to pretend to be the first one?
Why didn't Russia? Why? Okay, we beat them in the space race. They just give up. Did people give up and say, okay, the Wright brothers flew? Okay, that's it. Oh, they created a car. Okay, that's it. Why has nobody been back in 50 years? They built an airplane. All of a sudden, everybody's building airplanes. There's competition, airlines,
Are you just
cars.
skeptical of everything?
I have become skeptical. I think rightfully so.
How far does the skepticism reach?
Well, at this point, it's cosmology. So
You
that's about as
actually
big as it
run-
gets, right?
One of the reasons everyone here knows you is because you actually run some experiments. Talk about the experiments that you do.
Well, yeah, that actually, early on in this journey, a guy who's not a flat earther, he's just a photographer, took a picture of Chicago skyline from the other side of Lake Michigan. I think it was actually an ABC News affiliate that was sent to, and the weatherman said, well, we shouldn't be able to see this because it should be on the other side of the curve. I mean, it's like almost 60 miles away. So if you do the math, 8 inches per mile squared, that's pretty far. And I don't remember the math exactly, but it was something like the curvature of the Earth should be such that a significant amount of the Sears Tower, or Willis Tower, should have been obscured by the curve. So he essentially admits that, and he said, so what you're seeing here is a mirage. Now, I looked at that picture that was on the screen, and I'm going, that is not a mirage. Mirages are wavy and inverted and don't look anything like the photograph that's on the television. So the first thing that went in my mind is, that's not a mirage. And I called a friend of mine who grew up in that area, and he says, oh, we see Chicago all the time. Yeah, that's not a mirage. I'm like, dude, we've got to do a test. Because my thinking is, okay, if that's a mirage, then let's just get in a boat and drive across with a camera. Because if it's a mirage, it's going to magically disappear, and then the city will roll up over the wall, and then that's what should happen if it's a mirage. But if it's not a mirage, then the city's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger on my camera. And so we did. It took a long time to find the right weather conditions to make it work, almost a year, in fact. And it was June of 2016. Rick Hummer and I got in a boat, and we pulled out of the harbor, turned, and 46 miles away there was a sea just without the camera. But we also had the Nikon Coolpix P900, which has become the flat earther's camera. That's why you can hardly find them in stores anymore, because people are buying them up. Because the joke is the Nikon Coolpix P900 bringing ships back over the curve since 2015, because you can use this camera to see things you're not supposed to see. So we bought these cameras, we got on a boat, and we drove all the way across, and all the city did was get bigger and bigger and bigger, my camera. And then we drove back and it got smaller and smaller and smaller. So I posted a video, Skiba proves the Chicago skyline in a mirage, and that went viral. That was the beginning of a number of tests that we started doing.
Why do the tests?
It goes back to the question, why do you believe what you believe? I'm not going to believe things anymore just because you or anybody else tells me. Because I'm finding that more often than not, that people who tell me stuff are not necessarily intentionally lying to me. They may have been lied to themselves. They may have been deceived themselves, and they accepted, in ignorance, what was said, and they just parroted it. I'll give you an example. I don't believe in evolution either. So, my family recently went to Hawaii, and we went snorkeling. And we were under there checking out the fish and all that stuff. It was great. And then we came back up and we're on the boat. One of the tour guides was explaining how all the fish that we saw, what we saw. And this fish evolved from this, and that's how this fish evolved. And this evolved. So I'm just there taking it. I'm like, oh. As we're leaving the boat, the family that was in front of me said to the tour guide, "Man, you did such a good job. That was awesome." And she says, "Well, thank you. I'm just glad I was finally able to put my degree to good use." And I said to myself, wow, that's amazing. Because she innocently went to school, believed her teachers, who also innocently believed their teachers, who read something in a book that somebody wrote. Nobody questioning anything, just saying, oh, okay, an authority figure that I trust said something, so I trust it, and then I parrot it with passion. Like she did. She had so much zeal and passion about these fish. Now she thinks they evolved basically out of a molten rock.
But I mean, some people would say some of these experiments that you guys run are a little simple, and you're taking a simple concept and applying it more generally than you really can.
Sure. Science is supposed to be what? How do you define science?
You ask a question, try to find the answer.
Okay. Ask a question, try to fill in the answer. It should be testable, observable, and repeatable. You should be able to do it. Does anything about science say that I have to have a badge or have a title or have even a degree? Or do I have to just have a question and try to find an answer to it? If that's what science is, and it's testable, observable, and repeatable, then the question starts with, is that a mirage? 60 miles away? That looks like a perfect skyline of Chicago? Let's go find out. Guess what? It's not a mirage. There was no big hump of water that we had to go over, roll back down on the other side to find the city.
For those people who are curious, do you have a science background?
Nope. But I have the ability to ask questions, seek answers, and test and observe and repeat. So there's no reason anybody should listen to me. In fact, I tell people, I'll tell you right now, don't listen to me. Don't believe me. That's something, every time I speak somewhere, I tell people, do not believe the thing I say. Don't believe, take notes if you want to.
But they use what you do and what you say in your experiments as part of what helps them.
If they listen to me, they didn't believe me, as I said. If they did, that's on them. I tell them, look, don't believe me. This is what I did. This is how I did it. Go do it yourself. ABC, go get in a boat on a clear day and drive across Lake Michigan towards Chicago. I'm going to publicly challenge you to do that.
I'd love to go back to Chicago. So would he, because he's from up there.
Just do it. I mean, why not?
It's not going to be clear for a while, though. It's snowing there.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, it was around this time of the year that we originally were trying to get it, and the people that we were trying to charter a boat with, they're like, what are you, suicidal?
Yeah,
It's
you
like,
can't go this time of year. Like,
oh, it's extremely dangerous. But, I mean, why not? You know, so much of science is just taught to us in a textbook in a classroom. You know? And then we go out, unless you become a scientist, you go into that specific field.
right, and then you watch things explode in front of you.
Yeah, but you don't, you know, most of us said, okay, that's what they taught me, that's what I believe, that's what I'm going to parrot. But, you know, for me, it started with regards to this topic we're talking about here, with Mark Sargent challenging me and saying, great, Rob, you believe the globe. Go prove it.
Now, at that point, were you skeptical about everything else?
Well, I've been skeptical about a number of things before that.
So you just kind of always had this skeptical,
You know, it's funny.
conspiracy theory type of mind.
I suppose I probably have. I went to visit my family in Massachusetts a while back and found my baby book. My mom had that baby journal. And when it was on the page, it talked about speech development. My mom wrote, he constantly questions everything. It was like her earliest
Your
memories.
baby book.
My baby book. He constantly questions everything. And then there was another one, like, most unusual thing baby said. And she wrote, I just don't believe it. It was actually in my baby book. So, yeah, I'm 48 now. I suppose I haven't changed a whole lot since then.
Naturally curious and
I want to know stuff.
yeah. But not everything we're capable of in our own minds understanding. So at some point you have to depend on other people. We can't witness everything in life ourselves.
But okay, if I were to say to you, if I asked you, why do you believe the Earth's a globe? What would you say?
I don't know that I necessarily believe there's a globe.
You don't know that there is a globe? Have you been converted?
No, no. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying,
Come on, I want a
like,
soundbite. I'm recording this too.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I don't necessarily know what I think about this. I literally got assigned the story yesterday.
Oh, you're like, what am I getting into?
I think there are some curious things that you guys talk about, but there's also a lot of skepticism and analysis about things that I don't think necessarily the people who are saying have an understanding of.
How much of this have you actually sat through?
I watched all the clues.
Oh, so
I've seen all the clues.
How much of the
I haven't sat through any of the presentations. We do the interviews out here in the hallway.
That's a bummer.
So,
Yeah, because there's a lot of good stuff, especially today. Today has been loaded with some very good information. But when I first got into it, see, the first thing you hear is, we've all seen the pictures, so I'm already trust that. Then they'll say, well, dude, if you've ever been in an airplane, you've seen the curves. Now, prior to doing any of this research myself, I probably would have been that guy. I probably would have said that myself. If you'd asked me this 4 years ago, sure. I probably would have said that, because I fly a lot.
do you fly? Are you a pilot?
I
or
was.
Do you,
I was a helicopter pilot in the Army for 6 years. That was in from 86 to 94.
So you've looked at the instruments, you know the altitudes.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up. Because that's sort of what tripped me up in some of this is, okay, first of all, they said, well, if you've ever flown in a plane, you've seen the curve. And I would have said that too. Until thinking about this intentionally, I fly once, twice a month or more. I travel 35 to 40,000 feet. I'm in that commercial airline, right, looking out the window, and two things occurred to me. That it's like, okay, wait a minute. The math for the 25,000 miles circumference ball is 8 inches per mile squared. That's how much it curves to maintain circumference. Right? So that means the first mile away is 8 inches drop over the curve. And you go, all you need is 3 miles. Because at 3 miles, if I'm 6 feet tall and you're 6 feet tall, and you walk 3 miles away from me, the top of your head should be at the bottom of my feet. Because we're standing on a ball, right? So you walk away on the ball, 8 inches per mile squared, 3 miles, it's 6 feet. So if the top of your head is supposed to be at the bottom of my feet, how is the horizon at my eye level? That's my first question. So then I'm on the plane going, I already don't know how the horizon's ever at my eye level if it's dropping off exponentially in every direction around me, standing on a ball. So how is the horizon rising with me to 35,000 feet at eye level? I look out the window and there it is, there at eye level. So that, that's the first question I have. And the second, I'm going, it's flat. It's not curved. I would have said it was curved before. That would have been my knee-jerk reaction.
Some of the most brilliant minds in science, I don't think they would sell their souls to tell a lie.
I don't think some of these guys actually would have to. I really don't. I mean, it depends on the field of science they're in. But if you would have sat through my presentation yesterday, I actually showed when it comes to cosmology, Michio Kaku, right? One of the brilliant minds of our time, says that we're off by a factor of 10 to 120. That's a 1 followed by 120 zeros. He said that. That's how far we're off. Neil deGrasse Tyson said, when it comes to cosmology, we're 96% stupid. I got them saying, I don't have to say it, they're saying it for us. So, you said
it's still a large leap to go from globe to flat.
It's a big leap, for sure. But if I've got some of the most brilliant minds in the world telling me that they're 96% stupid and off by 1 followed by 120 zeros, I'm going, maybe I shouldn't listen to that. Because he's admitting he's stupid, 96% stupid, in the subject that he's supposed to be an expert in. By his own words. I can give you the clip if you want. So,
what do people generally say to you though whenever you?
They think you're crazy. They're nuts. That's like,
do they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's Mark Sargent says, first rule of Flat Club is you don't talk about Flat Club. It's like a movie.
But why
Fight
is
Club.
that? If you think you're right, isn't part of the
Well, none of us adhere to that. All of us want to tell people because we start seeing stuff. And, I came back from Lake Michigan and published a video. I published it on YouTube because I wanted people to know. Then you got a few 100,000 people calling you crazy, stupid, moron, insane, and all the but reasons why, refraction or whatever threw the city up over the curve. So if you're going to go down this path, be prepared for a lot of verbal abuse, and in some cases physical abuse. I've actually had death threats.
Really?
I have actually had physical death threats.
Like letters.
Somebody sending me a letter saying
that they're going to kill you because you believe the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I think you're crazy,
it's
not.
That's what.
That seems like a really aggressive.
Very aggressive. And this is the other thing that intrigued me about this subject. I've talked about a lot of controversial subjects. Lots of them. I've never seen the level of vitriol. I mean, I'm talking like people who are normally the most sweet, kind, loving, gentle people go completely psycho in front of me.
Because you believe the Earth is flat.
Or even insinuate that I'm looking into it. Because it took me over a year to finally come to the conclusion I came to. April 15th when I got into it, it was after the Lake Michigan test at the end of June of last year, so over a year.
So you've only been in this camp for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
It's pretty new.
Oh, I've been here. It's been only since about 2000.
How can you be so certain then?
Well, because everything that we have looked into has indicated. Now, I'll take it to a different level from me personally.
But that's also assuming that your analysis is on. What we see is one perception. What reality is totally different.
So,
I'm just posing that question.
Well, Nikola Tesla recognized the problem in his day that I would say has just gotten exponentially worse in our day. And he said scientists in his day have wandered off into equation after equation until they built something that looks nothing, has no relation to reality. So you talk to a theoretical physicist, so what do? They conjure stuff up in their mind. It's not physical. It's not something anybody can test. It's all in their head. In fact, William Shatner just did a documentary where he went around interviewing people. He interviewed Michio Kaku, and he's like, "What did you do?" William Shatner. And he explained it to him, and it's like William Shatner's analysis afterwards is like, it's all in his head. And he made a statement, something to the effect of science and science fiction. They're the same thing. So I'm not impressed with a guy who has all these great ideas about black holes and dark matter.
Some science is pretty
real science. Actually, we're going to be playing a video later today called Scientism Exposed. There's a difference between science, which we defined earlier, and scientism. Scientism is a religion. It's a dogma. It's a belief that you're trying to force stuff to fit. And you end up with creating things like dark matter that no one's ever seen, no one knows anything about. They're 96% stupid. But that's called science, and that's what makes it in our textbook. Have you heard that we share 98% of our genome with chimps? Have you heard that about evolution?
I've heard the theory of evolution.
And part of the theory is that we share 98% of our genetic makeup with that of chimpanzees. I played a clip, and I should send it to you or whatever, from people who believe in evolution, saying how they got to that 98%. And they basically looked at the genome of human beings and chimps, and the huge mismatch sections that didn't line up, they just tossed out something like 1.4 billion letters of code in the genome. They tossed out. And what was left, they said, yep, we're 98% the same. You tossed out 1.4% or 1.4 billion codes.
First of all, that's a theory.
A theory of evolution, right? But it's passed off as fact.
But it is referred to as the theory.
Not in textbooks today.
No, it is.
Show me a textbook that says that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because the textbooks that I see these days put it out as a fact. And you got Professor Richard Dawkins saying it is a fact, proved by evidence, repeatedly discussed.
There are people who believe in it, but it is still referred to as a theory.
Among objective, open-minded people, yes. If you go to any science museum, it's passed off as fact. You watch any movie these days, it's passed off as fact.
But there's a lot of you focus on parts of science that you can find things to be skeptical of. There's also a ton of science that
Real
is
science.
very much visual. You can see the chemical reaction happening.
Bingo.
You can do these two things, and this is
Boom.
the outcome every single time.
Awesome. That's real science. All for it.
So you discredit all of science when
No,
you
I
say...
don't discredit all of science. I'm discrediting that part of science that is scientism. And usually the part that is scientism deals with our origins. How did we get here?
Is that ultimately what it's all about?
Yeah.
Start.
How did we get here? Why are we
Flat
here?
Earth, is that what it ultimately, is that the reason it matters?
Yeah, I think it is in many ways. For me, I'm a Christian. Raised a Christian, built a Christian family. The Bible is something I've been in my entire life. Been a missionary, traveled around the world, a missionary. Been in some foreign ministry since age 7, 40. When I started looking into this from a biblical worldview, we're talking origins, Genesis. Genesis chapter 1 starts out the whole book. Okay, we're starting the book, the Bible, with chapter 1 of the first book in the Bible, and it's describing a snake. When you break down the text, whatever it represents, there's no way you can get a spinning heliocentric globe out of anything in the Bible. So that created a bit of a problem for me, because on one hand I say I'm a Bible-believing Christian, and on the other hand I'm being told to run a spinning heliocentric globe. Which one am I going to believe? Well, why do I believe this? The spinning heliocentric globe. It's in the Bible, right? When you start trying to figure out why do I believe what I believe, you realize those aren't very good things to believe in the first place. So then I go back to the thing over here that has saved my life, that has meant the world to me, that I have seen with my own eyes, validation. And I go, I have way more reason to believe and trust this than I do people over here advocating this who admit to being 96% stupid.
But is that why you become skeptical of everything else? Did it start there? That
becomes the reason why I become skeptical about things dealing with origins, just in terms of Bible. There are plenty of other things I'm skeptical about that have nothing to do with origins.
But where does all of that come from?
Like I said, I must have been born with it. As soon as I'm able to speak, I'm like, my question's everything.
Yeah.
So, maybe I'm predisposed to that. I don't know.
I just don't want to believe what's said.
I want to know what the truth is. And, I can tell you something. You can choose to believe me or not. Does that mean I'm right? If I tell you something, does that mean I'm right? Even if you accept it, doesn't mean I'm right. So I'm looking at it the same way. I'm like, okay, just because these guys are saying it doesn't mean it's right. Let's go see if we can find out.
But just because you guys are saying it doesn't mean it's right.
I tell you, don't believe me. Look at the camera. Don't believe a thing I say. Get out and test for yourself.
That seems so crazy to me.
To test for yourself? That seems
No,
crazy.
that you're like saying, don't believe me.
Why? I'm
Because
against believing what somebody else said just because they said it. So I'd be a hypocrite and say, hey, please believe me just because I said it.
But almost it's like, were you saying that you're like everyone's a liar? Like I'm lying
No,
too?
I don't think it's necessarily lying. It's lying if you know you're intentionally deceiving someone. If you have believed the lie, if you've believed the lie and then you parrot the lie,
right?
Are you really lying?
So you rationalize the fact that this is the truth according to you. But you would not say 100% this is the truth. The absolute truth.
I would tell you don't believe anything I say. I would tell you I believe it, and this is why I believe it. But I'll tell you, and if anybody searches my lectures, I speak on lots of things. I start pretty much every lecture I say by saying, don't believe the thing I say. Search and see if these things be true.
Because you're not 100%.
Well, I believe it, but that doesn't mean I'm right. I don't claim to have the corner on truth. I believe things to be true. But belief, I had a portion of my presentation that I gave yesterday called The Absurdity of Belief. And the reason I titled it that is because if I firmly believe something that you don't, you're saying, this is the truth. Right? You can do the same thing. Say something you believe, absolutely. And I'm like, oh, this woman's crazy. That's completely absurd. So belief, that's not a basis for anything. Facts, provable evidence.
People are walking around here saying that like aren't true. Like I've seen with my own two eyes.
What's up?
Things that have happened in the world. Shootings.
What's that have to do with flat Earth?
That they say that all of this kind of like goes together. It sort of makes it feel.
Yeah, that's the problem with the conspiracy world. It is assuming that every single thing is a conspiracy. Okay, I could sit like this.
You don't go that far down the road.
No, I could sit with my hands like this, and a million memes will go out tomorrow, saying I'm in the Illuminati or a Freemason. See, look. They could take the conspiracy to the purpose. I read a book, The Purpose-Driven Life, and there are certain things about Rick Warren that people don't like. Okay, so I did a video that talked about my testimony, what I've been through, and part of my testimony was I read that book during a very difficult time in my life, and it really helped me. It's part of my life story. Immediately, all these memes go out that I'm a part of the CFR, part of the Illuminati, I'm a Freemason shill, and I'm part of the New World Order because I'm associated now, because I read a book, with Rick Warren. That's the absurdity. That's where this whole conspiracy angle can take some people. Part of my testimony was I said that I wanted to be a filmmaker. And in the video where I'm saying that, I had a picture of me standing next to George Lucas. So they immediately see this guy's in with George Lucas. He's a Hollywood shill, and he's a this, that. If they actually took the time to research, they would see, no, that's George Lucas and Steven Spielberg standing next to each other on the set of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I just photoshopped my face onto it. Some of the people you may have interviewed may be those types of people. That they think everything is a conspiracy. I'm not. I believe there are lots of conspiracies, yes. But I believe in researching it, having validation, and something that I can point to. What's your evidence for your belief? If you believe this, okay, show us. Where's the evidence for that? So if they're going to assert that all these shootings are fake or all this and that, okay, where's your evidence?
But with the flat Earth, like, where's the evidence? Where's the
then,
end of the world? We should be able to find the end of the world.
You should be in that room listening to the evidence. You're asking the question, but
I mean, we should be. If the world is flat, there should be an end somewhere, right?
There is an end. Yes.
Why haven't we found it?
I believe we have found it. Yeah. And I believe it's on the UN map, on the UN logo. The logo. It's on the UN flag.
And where would the end of the world be?
Antarctica.
It seems to be kind of a thing.
Well, it is. And the model that, I don't want to say everyone else, there are different models, believe it or not.
There's some like arguing amongst how the
Well,
model should look.
look, let's be fair. For over 500 years, we've had the Copernican model pushed on us without any choice in the matter. From the time we go to school, that globe in the classroom. 500 years, we've had every form of media and indoctrination you can imagine forcing the globe on us. We've had 2 years to challenge that. So to think that we're going to like undo...
They thought the world was flat. Remember,
actually, for 4,000 years.
Yeah, I mean, Christopher
right.
Columbus, they thought he was going to fall off of the
Sure.
world, you know?
Yeah. Yep. And then somebody said, no, it's a globe. You're not going to fall off it. Even in the flat Earth model that everybody here believes, would pick your model, there's no edge to fall off of. So, that's one of the things people, you believe the Earth's flat? So what are you
You
going to
should
fall
be
off?
able to like march to the edge of the ice and like it would stop.
Well, you can. You can go to the edge of the ice. But here's the challenge. Here's the question that I've asked that I haven't got an answer yet. There may be an answer. I don't know. I have met people who've been to Antarctica. I met a guy who worked there for 3 years. I said, okay, cool, man. You've been there for 3 years. Have you or anybody you've ever known or heard of gone more than 800 to 1,200 miles inland from the coast? Anyway. So, assuming the model many of us subscribe to is true, the edge would be somewhere in that ballpark, or maybe perhaps beyond that. But I haven't met anybody that's gone 800 to 1,200 miles inland from the coast. And by the way, the coast starts with 200 to 300 foot ice walls. So the whole idea of ships falling off the edge or anybody falling off the edge, not going to happen. Admiral Byrd went down there under Operation Hydrant. They call it Operation Hydrant because when you get there, you got to jump over a 200 foot ice wall. Just do a Google search on the coastline of Antarctica, and it just goes up.
Well, they also talk about how it's melting and there's a volcano.
Well, that's a whole issue. And it keeps going up from there.
Wasn't that the news yesterday or something like that?
Yeah, it goes higher from there, so no one's falling off. For me, from the biblical perspective, looking at the Hebrew text, looking at the Greek text, looking at the English text, it says there's this firmament thing over us. And if you look at the language for the word firmament, pick your language. It's hard. It's a hard structure. So, presumably, then, if we're under a dome, like the Truman Show, it's somewhere 800 to 1,200 miles inland from the coast, or perhaps further. So, and if you want to volunteer to go down there and get some footage, that'd be awesome. I'm not going. It's too cold.
You don't want to go?
Nope.
You don't want the answer?
I'm content that if the answer's out there, somebody will find it. I might question it, sure. But I've worked in cold weather conditions enough to know I'm not going to do that again. That's why I live in Texas. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I've done some things far north, way cold. I like my fingers. I want to pick them. So, if you want to go down there, I think it'd be a good thing for you guys to do.
I've been in my minus 50 temperatures. I know how that feels.
Too many more courageous fish.
What do you want people to take away from this?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Well, I created a website called Testing the Globe. That's what I was saying. Go out and test.
You just want them to ask the questions.
I'll ask the same question Mark Sargent asked me. Why do you believe what you believe? And let you go from there. Because I could tell you something and you just look at me and say I'm crazy. But
Well, I think a lot of people watching this are going to be like, that man is crazy.
I'm sure they probably do. And I would say, well, they're crazy for not testing what they think they believe.
If it turns out that the globe is...
Even when you suggest
I have 4 online, but one seems to
I think it just requires
takes 2 hours. Back and forth.
I know. So I'm gonna do the same for Rush, and then he's just got.
If it turns out that the globe was all wrong. For all these hundreds of years, that some of the things that people around here believe are all conspiracy to make people keep believing it. That is a crazy lie that a lot of people have been in on.
No, not a lot of people would be in on it. That would have been deceived by it. That would be appropriate.
But I mean, over the years, you have to pass that lie down and be like, it is now your
You know how
responsibility.
easy it is to do that? Put a picture in the textbook. Boom, one generation. That's it. You put a picture in a textbook, start teaching kids from their earliest age, this is the way it is. And they trust the teacher in the front of the room. They have no reason not to trust them. Nice person teaching them something. They accept it as truth. One generation, boom, it's fact.
But don't you think it's a little insane
What?
that someone would perpetuate a lie like that?
Well, not if there is a bigger picture. And the bigger picture, many of us have come to believe, is hiding God.
That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Well, that's what it would, to me, that would be the ultimate motivation. Because people will say, well, what would be the motivation? And why would they do it? Well, a pretty huge motivation would be to hide God. Which I don't want to paint a broad stroke over the entire scientific community, but I think you have to admit most of the scientific community is not in favor of God. You know, they think it's a fantasy. It's stupid, ignorant people, sheep herders, and fishermen. Do a poll on how many scientists consider themselves to believe in God or believe in God. So, what if this whole thing is about hiding God?
What about the astronauts who've seen the Earth? They say,
Okay, how many astronauts have been to the moon?
but I mean the ones who've been up in the sky and they've seen the Earth and they've seen the
But how many astronauts have been to the moon? 12 have allegedly walked it. Go to allis.com, AULIS. PhD level scholars going through the Apollo program, ripping it apart, showing why it's important. Okay, once you come, Robbie Davidson said it like this. Okay, when you're trying to talk to somebody about this subject, first you need to figure out where they are with certain things. The moon landing is one. Because if you wholeheartedly believe in the moon landing, let's talk about sports. If you dismiss the moon landing as the fraud that it is, well then okay, let's have the conversation. Because if the moon landing didn't happen, then you needed the picture of some textbooks that came from Apollo 16. And when you look into the founding of NASA, okay, I talked about Admiral Byrd, right? Goes down there with Operation Hydra. Comes back, starts telling people, wow, Antarctica is amazing, you know, and okay, cool. All these other nations start going down there with the United States also. We have Operation Deep Freeze, which is in the late 50s. All of a sudden, something happened. Something changed. Everybody pulls out of Antarctica. They start working on this thing, the Antarctic Treaty. In 1958, NASA's formed with Project Paperclip. A bunch of Nazis came over, were brought in under Operation Paperclip. Nazis and Freemasons ran the space program. That's easily verifiable. Anybody don't believe what I say, go out there and look it up for yourself. You got Nazis and Freemasons. Would you consider either one of those trustworthy?
There's a lot of conspiracy theories going on.
This is conspiracy
But
fact.
I mean,
This is fact. Look it up.
I'm just saying, but you're also like believing things that others people have said to be
I'm looking
fact, but
into-
you can't verify that. Can you speak to those people and find out for 100%
Go
that
ask
they were
NASA.
Nazis?
Go ask the U.S. government. Take this interview and go ask people what was Project Paperclip. Look it up for yourself.
I'm just saying, but you're also having to go based on the
Well,
word
sure.
of someone else.
Sure, but this is apparently fact that everybody understands that looks into it. It's a fact. Operation Paperclip really happened. There are government records that show this happened. So I can validate the story by the records that.
But you don't believe the other government records.
Let's
I'm just saying,
I understand. So you have Operation Paperclip bringing over these Nazis. You can look into how many astronauts were Freemasons. Do you think that they're trustworthy? Are you a Freemason? Do your people Freemasons? Huh? Do you think they're trustworthy?
Do you have something against the Freemasons?
I have a lot against the Freemasons, absolutely. I have a lot against secret societies in general. Secret societies in general. Yeah, I have a lot against that. Okay, so you have an organization run by people who are card-carrying Freemasons, established by people who are Nazis, and occultists. Look into Jack Parsons, JPL, Propulsion Laboratory, Jack Parsons, and his affiliation with Aleister Crowley, of all people. the guy who called himself the Beast, the father of Satanism, okay, and L. Ron Hubbard. Okay, this is all stuff you can figure out. You guys are journalists. Go do your job. Look this stuff up. Okay, these are people who founded the space program. Okay, starting in 1958. And then the first thing the United States and Russia did before the space race, there was the missile race. Again, you've got recorded video of people like John F. Kennedy talking about these things. Okay? We have this documentation. The missile race preceded the space race, and the United States called our portion of it, when we were launching high-altitude nuclear bombs into the sky, we called it Operation Fishbowl. Fishbowl, which is part of Project Dominic. Well, if you look up the name Dominic, the word Dominic means of the Lord. So we literally called it the Fishbowl of the Lord, was the name of the project that we were sending high-altitude nuclear bombs into the sky right after going to Antarctica and everybody leaving and saying, hey, we need to have a treaty. Saying nobody can go back there except under the express guidelines of the international community that drew up these guidelines. You and I can't just go sightseeing. We could go to Antarctica, yes, but we're going to go there under the express guidelines of the treaty, carefully guarded,
Yeah, I guess my big thing is overall picture. I just don't see why it matters. Like, I can believe God created the earth.
Right.
I don't care if the earth is round or square or flat or why. Who cares?
So then why would you get angry at me for?
No, I don't. I just don't see the point.
I don't think it would affect any of our every day. I mean, we're going to go to work. We're going to do what we do. It doesn't affect anything we're doing unless you take the bigger picture into consideration.
Bigger picture.
Hiding God.
That's ultimately all.
That is for me. It may be different for other people. I can only speak for myself. Because that's what it appears to be. I mean, when you have the spinning heliocentric globe that's going around the sun, hurling itself through space. Oh, the other thing is, when you start looking up various aspects of the globe, you keep finding the number 666 over and over and over. The tilt of the Earth, 23.4 degrees off center. 90-degree angle, 90, subtract 23.4, 66.63. Yeah, maybe that's a coincidence. 8 inches per mile squared. 8 inches is 0.666 of a foot. And it keeps getting more and more and more. I mean, I got a whole diagram to show this. I'm going, at some point I go, that's a little freaky. That's kind of weird. If you believe in a biblical worldview,
God might have a funny sense of humor.
That's an interesting sense of humor. But if you come from a biblical worldview, you've got the good and the bad, right? You've got God and Satan. You've got Jesus Christ and the Antichrist. Beast system, 666.
How do you sell this though to regular people who just look at it? Yeah, like,
Well, I've learned actually to have filters and feel out the conversation. And
because once you start talking about all the things you really think,
yeah.
I think a lot of people turn it on. Like,
Oh,
they
I'm
might
sure they
buy
do.
into some of the
Yeah.
initial things, and then they go,
Sure.
that is way too
But
far
this
out
is what
there.
I've told everybody. A, don't believe a thing I say. B, take 24 hours of your life to seriously look into it. Do it all at once, spend it out a week, well, I don't care. Take 24 hours of your life to look into the other side. Because you've only been indoctrinated, just like all of us, with one side. The spinning heliocentric, globular, Copernican Earth. Watch the movie The
You have
Principle.
such disgust for it, don't you?
I do now. Well, I don't like being lied to.
Is that what it ultimately is about?
Well, for
Like,
me,
you know,
for a lot of
everybody's-
us, when you realize, when you start breaking some of these things down, and you realize that's not true, and yet it's being forced on me as true, and I'm the crazy one if I don't believe that. Yeah, it makes you, you have emotions. Natural. Watch the movie The Principle. The Principle was a movie done by people who are not flat earthers. But they make, in my view, an absolutely rock-solid scientific case that this place is not moving. Not only is this place not moving in terms of spinning or orbiting, we're not going around the sun. All the stuff's going around us. Okay, well, if you can accept that the spinning heliocentric globular Earth Copernican model is false, then you have to throw out pretty much everything you think you believe anyway, because everything you think you believe is based on that model. So here this movie comes out, The Principle, making, in my view, again, a rock-solid scientific case to prove that this place is not moving and it's geocentric. I'm like, okay, well, that's the gateway drug to flat Earth anyway. Because at that point, you have to hit the reset button in your brain and say, I got to rethink everything I think I do anyway.
That's what the whole flat Earth thing does. Makes you rethink it all.
And yeah, I think that's a good side of it, is that it makes you, I'll take a really solid look at why you believe what you do.
One question. I'll start it there.
Yeah, why do you believe you do? So, that's my challenge to you, to anybody watching this. Why do you believe what you believe?
Anything else you think?
Did you just address why gather in person, why have this big conference?
Oh yeah.
You and maybe one else.
I think it's interesting. I mean, people seem, there's a lot of people here. It seems like there could have probably been more people here.
Yeah, well, I think the venue was the limit to size.
Why get together, meet each other?
Well, I think there's some good synergy here. Not everybody agrees, and that's great. I do a lot of conferences on a lot of different subjects, and I actually love it when I have a chance to rub shoulders with other researchers who are into the same whatever it is that I'm looking into. We can compare notes, we can challenge each other. I love it, but it's also a chance for all of us to sort of kick back and relax a little bit because we're among fellow believers, without people throwing rocks at you and calling you names and everything else. You can actually have civilized, friendly discussion and relax and look at more evidence together. And when you have multiple researchers all in one place presenting lots of different research that they've all been doing, why not? I mean, people who push the globe get together and have meetings about it. Why can't we talk about this?
Thank you.
Sorry, that went longer than I thought, but I was just trying to make sure we had good.
No, it's good.
Some good explanations from him in the same things in a couple different ways and different leads. That's what I was concerned about.
It's like we get 5 to 7 minutes.
Well, that's the hard part. It's going to turn into how long is the whole piece?
Well, I think the whole point of the piece is just to raise the question. Let's toss this out here and see how you think
What's all
about
these
it.
crazy people meeting?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what I think. I can think you're crazy, but it's still an interesting thing to talk about.
Believe me. In fact, if you want to roll the camera, I'll tell you, I thought this was crazy and didn't want to get into it.
I think it's what your wife said. You totally not.
I had
First, she was all about it right away, and you were not.
No. Yeah, definitely not. I know. Look, I've been in your business. I know what you're doing. You're gonna get the soundbite, whatever. If it's a 5-minute piece, whatever I said that you guys choose to pick, depending on whoever your editor is, and whatever your angle is.
Oh no, there's a good 15 people that get involved, so it becomes a thing.
Well, yeah, but whoever makes the decision on what are we gonna make these people look stupid, or are we gonna make these people look like, hey, there's something they got here, or whatever the angle is you choose, that's the soundbite you're gonna look for me to fit your 5-minute.
No, I don't think we come at it that way.
Yeah.
No.
So we try to
Then you'd be the exception of every media outlet out
No,
there.
I think that's a misconception of the media. I think most of us come at it, with the idea that my place is just to give you the voice to say what it is you actually think. And if we think that we need to go find someone to say the other side, then we will go find a pilot, or we'll go find a vote, or
I didn't mention
those things to get them to say this counter opinion. But it's you should get to say your piece.